Hello, and welcome to our presentation on business in Peru. In this video, we will be overviewing the region and demographics of the country, and we will be diving into the political, economic, sociocultural, technological, environmental, and legal aspects of Peru. To begin, Peru is the third largest country in South America after Brazil and Argentina. It is made up of a variety of landscapes from mountains and beaches to deserts and rainforests. The population of Peru is steadily increasing, with almost half of all Peruvians as Amerindian, or 45% of the total population. 37% of Peruvians are mestizos, a term that denotes people of mixed European and Amerindian ancestry. And Peruvians of European descent make up about 15% of the population. The remaining 3% are Afro-Peruvians. Chinese Peruvians are people of Japanese descent. Peru's population is increasingly concentrated in the labor force age range, ages 15 to 64. However, the ratio of dependent age population to working age population is expected to decrease by over 1/5 within the next 10 years.
Peru is a democratic republic. Its government is structured following the principle of separation of three independent powers: the chief of state, legislative branch, and judicial branch. The chief of state is the president directly elected by absolute majority popular vote in 2 rounds if needed for a 5-year term. The legislative branch is the Congress of Republican of Peru, which seats 130. The judicial branch is the Supreme Court, consists of 16 judges and divided into civil, criminal, and constitutional social sectors.
As for the rule of law of Peru, there is a big difference between the United States and Peru when it comes to the dates shown here ranging from 2002 to 2014. The United States shows a strong rule of law ranging just hovering above 1.5 and 1 year, following below that in 2004. Whereas in Peru, showing a weaker rule of law just hovering above negative 0.5 and peaking between the years 2005 through 2009. As for the control of corruption, we use dates ranging between 2002 and 2014. The U.S. shows a strong control well above the zero mark, peaking in 2002 but declining and leveling off in 2006 and on. For Peru, once again, the control of corruption is not as strong, just below the zero mark. Begins to decline after 2011 to 2014. We then asked our interviewee, Brenda, who is a native of Peru, about the corruption there, and this is what she had to say.
I think it's corrupt because from what I remember being there, when my cousins they would be in college and they wouldn't pass a class, my uncles would pay the professors off so they would pass my cousins. And also my uncle is a police officer and sometimes he would tend to take bribes.
The economy of the country is quite strong compared to all the other countries in the region. The growth of the economy is due mostly to the export of natural resources. The economic system of the country is a free market economy. It consists of regulatory reform and open market policies. When we talk about economic freedom compared to the rest of the world, Peru's economy is more free compared to the world's average, but it's still less free than the United States. Under the law, foreign and domestic investors in the country are generally treated equally. The inflation rate of Peru is continuously higher compared to the United States, which causes the value of the money to go down. As I said before, most of the growth is due to export of natural resources such as copper, gold, silver, and natural gas. Another thing I want to point out is that Peru recently joined with some of the other strongest economies in the region to form a new organization called the Pacific Alliance, making it the largest free trade zone in Latin America. The goal of the country is to expand social programs to reduce the number of people living in poverty, which is around 60% of the population, mostly in the rural areas of the country. According to the gross income per capita at PPP, the average wealth of an average individual has been growing at a constant rate for the last 20 years, which is a very good sign for the country. GNI at PPP of Peru falls below average when compared to the world, and the difference is monumental when the GNI of Peru is compared to the United States. When comparing these two countries, keep in mind that the United States has one of the largest economies in the world. When we talk about the unemployment rate, it's 50% more likely that an individual will be employed in Peru than it is if they were in the United States. Even though the unemployment rates look great in the index, according to some of the analysts, there is a large number of unaccounted unemployed youth in the rural areas of the country. The human development rates in the country are getting better at a very minuscule level, keeping in mind that the human development standards are even lower for the poorer population compared to the wealthier counterparts.
Peru exports and imports various materials, raw materials, intermediate goods, consumer goods, and capital goods. Exports are copper, gold, petroleum, and zinc. Peru's top imports are petroleum, transmission apparatuses, automobiles, and maize. Raw materials being the highest of imports and exports for Peru. Peru has 5 top foreign investors. Importers are China, United States, Switzerland, Canada, and Japan. Exporters are China, United States, Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. China being one of the top exporters and importers for Peru. The Peruvian sol has been on a steady decline. It hit bottom in 2016 with an all-time low. In 2017, it slowly starts to rise.
What do you consider the most important source of income in Peru?
Well, it just depends where you are geographically. Peru is divided into 3 parts. Is the coast, and then the middle part, which is called Sierra in Spanish, and then the east part of Peru is called Selva, which is where the jungle is. So, in the coast is mostly mining and also a lot of fishing, and that's where most of the professional jobs tend to be because it's near the capital.
Peru's constitution provides freedom of religion. 81% of Peruvians are Roman Catholics, 13% are evangelical, and the remaining are other and unspecified of followers of traditional beliefs and small religious minorities. Religious festivals have strong Spanish influence, but they are also an example of how different beliefs and religions of Peru's pre-Hispanic cultures coexist. The coming together of different creeds, customs, and experiences have created close to 3,000 annual popular festivals. Let's look at languages in Peru. Spanish is the main language throughout Peru with 84% of Peruvians who speak it. Although most highland Indians are bilingual, Quechua is their preferred language and Spanish their second tongue. About 13% of Peruvians speak Quechua. When bargaining in rural markets, a Quechua word or two will not only endear you to the vendors, but usually get you an extra orange or more juice. Several small lowland groups speak Aymara or Aguruna. English is understood in the best hotels and in airline offices, tourist areas, and travel agencies, but it's of little use elsewhere. Although education in Peru is expanding, the government expenditure on education in Peru compared to the United States is not as high. The highest percentage provided was in 2009, a little over 3.13%, and the United States highest was at 5.56% in 2003. As you can see, Peru and USA differentiate the most with individualism. Peru is at 16, USA is at 91. Peru's score shows that they prefer a tight-knit framework in society in which individuals can expect their relatives or members of a particular in-group to look after them in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. USA prefers a loosely knit social framework in which individuals are expected to take care of only themselves and their immediate families.
Now I'm going to be talking about the technology of Peru. Just like any other country, the prevalence of technology use is going to be heavier in the metropolitan areas. Cellular, internet, or Wi-Fi and landline use is going to be heavier closer to the capital, which is Lima. The farther out towards the more rural areas or forests, the use will be less dense. 47.1% of households in the Lima metropolitan area have an internet connection, while just 1.4% of rural homes do. Peru is one of the weakest countries in the category of communication technologies among the Latin American economies, scoring a 3 out of 7 possible points according to World Economic Forum's Global Information Technology Report in 2015. However, it has made progress between 2012 and 2015 with the launch of National Broadband Plan, which is to connect 180 of the country's 196 provincial capitals, which resulted in 60% of those capitals to have high-speed internet. 74.55 per 100 people are internet users, and 1,650 per 1 million people have secure internet servers in the U.S., while there are 40.9 per 100 and 32 per 1 million in Peru. To add to that, 68.7% of Peruvian households have a television, and 537.65 per 1,000 people own a cellular device. Looking at the research and development investments of Peru, we looked at the data ranging between 1997 through 2004. As you can see, there was a peak between 2000 and 2001 and went back down to 0.114% of GDP. Research in Peru is very scarce, starting from 1970, which was 0.13%, and peaked in 1975 at 0.36%, but falling back down in 1981 to now. Whereas the U.S. also peaked in 2000 to 2001, but is steady throughout the years. The number of researchers in Peru is very little and underqualified, which shows here in the data for number of patent applications submitted. According to this graph, the data collected ranges from a 14-year span and is constant below 50,000 applications submitted. Peak is between the years of 1999 and 2001, while the U.S. has a positive climb with a few drops in numbers, but now just below 300,000.
Peru's environmental performance is that of a middle-income country that is experiencing significant economic growth based on renewable and non-renewable natural resources such as fisheries, metal mining, and hydrocarbons. Along with its great wealth of mineral deposits, the country has abundant water resources and a broad biodiversity that places it among the world's leading mega-diverse countries. Energy production has evolved in line with economic growth. The energy mix has shifted substantially over the last decade due to a sharp increase in natural gas production. While the country's contribution to global emissions of greenhouse gases is low, nationwide emissions caused by deforestation and changes in land use are significant. Air quality measures in Lima point to a decrease in concentrations of polluting materials explained primarily by the improved quality of fuels. Although the last decade has seen significant progress in water monitoring, quality, and treatment, there is still much room for improvement. As a result of various public policies involving environmental pressures, acute respiratory diseases and acute diarrhea in children have declined over time.
Peru is a democratic, social, independent, and sovereign republic. Although Peru's intellectual property rights have been low, Peru's legal framework provides for easy registration of trademarks, and inventors have been able to patent their inventions since 1994.
To highlight some of the strengths of this country, Peru's resource wealth, investment grade status, and commitment to closing its infrastructure deficit will keep investment levels sustained over the long term. Strong real GDP growth and the introduction of tax reforms have strengthened the public accounts, with the country's relatively strong fiscal position expected to provide support for the economy in the long term as well. Some of Peru's weaknesses are Peru's heavy reliance on commodity exports that will weigh on the country's trade dynamics due to the fact that China's economy caps prices and demand for base metals. Underdeveloped infrastructure, capacity constraints, declines in major mining firms' capital expenditure programs, and continued social unrest could weigh on output levels over the medium term. In fighting in the government, a lack of clear policy direction and fragmentation in the legislature often mean little major progress on key political reforms. The problem of underemployment and unemployment remains entrenched, and a high percentage of the labor force is believed to work in the informal sector for very low wages. Some of the opportunities provided to Peru are the signing of free trade agreements with the US, EU, and China, which will boost investment and improve export diversification. The mining, infrastructure, and oil and gas sectors provide scope for significant private investment despite ongoing social tensions in the affected Amazon areas of the country. Another wave of privatization schemes for several state-run companies across various sectors could help to deepen financial markets and ease the mining bias of the country's equity market. A growing middle class will make consumer-related sectors such as retail, food, and drink increasingly attractive for investors over the medium to long term. Although there are low-level spats with some of its neighbors, Peru faces no direct or immediate threat from foreign powers. Social divisions within Peru threaten the economy in a variety of ways. A continued intensification of strike action could impact growth in mining output, while heightened unrest in an opposition-dominated Congress could pressure the administration into substantial spending increases, weighing on the country's fiscal position. The end of Peru's export boom in light of weakened global demand threatens to expose the country's structural imbalances and dampen investment into vital infrastructure. Rising tensions between the federal government and indigenous communities, often over major mining projects, occasionally threaten to boil over into more widespread unrest, jeopardizing the government's policy agenda. A rise in activity from Peru's guerrilla Shining Path movement in recent quarters threatens to affect foreign investment in the infrastructure and energy sectors.